And unfortunately, he's going to be traveling back from Europe later this weekend. So that's going to be a tough return home while you're sick. Nobody wants to deal with that. So hopefully a speedy recovery for Dave, as he should be back with us on Monday. Usually Thursdays at 8, we get a chance to check in with the great Sam Amick. Had to move things around, but Sam's with us today. Good morning, Sam. How are you?
Good morning, Jay Ross. Doing well. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Everything good on the athletic side? I know you don't get pulled away often in these kind of things, but everything good there?
Yeah, no, we're good. Sorry about that yesterday. I'm out in Phoenix for a Suns related story that I'll put out in a couple weeks. So it was a good trip. I actually, I guess to preview it, spent some time with Matt Ishbia, their owner, and
Okay.
get a little taste of how they've gone from one of the worst situations in the league to a little surprise season here. So that was the scheduling conflict yesterday.
Okay, and I know you have, this is a story to come, but I thought Ishbia was one of the more interesting debuts into this league, because he came in and he was like, okay, there's some things I just don't think he gets, and he's going to have to deal with. And I'm with you. The Phoenix completely surprised me this year. What's his overall kind of attitude now to kind of their surprising turnaround?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the fun part, is whenever there's someone in a high profile spot where you can, be direct with them and ask the kind of questions you're talking about, which is like, all right, you came in real hot, did you have, any regrets? What did you learn about being an owner? The part that I love, and I guess to even put it in the context of the Kings situation, is like we spend so much time talking about whether it's Vivek, other owners, and part of this conversation was how like a lot of owners around the league, like the whole league, have a tendency to exert influence in the shadows and then, kind of pretend that they don't. And it's just it's a weird dynamic. And Matt is like, part of it, I think, is one of the distinctions is that he is a basketball guy, that he played the game at a fairly high level and has strong opinions about that. But he's also just, like, agree or disagree, he's pretty transparent about his level of involvement. If you remember going into last year, he put out a statement that basically said, I wasn't involved enough and I'm now going to be involved more. Like, that was the mistake. And it was almost the opposite of what people thought he would do. But yeah, I mean, he addresses all that stuff. And again, it's kind of one of those kind of agree or disagree, good chance to get his perspective on things.
All right. As we talk with Sam Amick from The Athletic. Sam, your latest is on the trade deadline, and specifically it's on Milwaukee. You've had connections with that organization, certainly with Giannis. And here we are. I thought we might get here, but maybe it's ramped up a little faster with a little more sense of urgency and seemingly, Sam, a desire for other teams to want a piece of this puzzle. So as we're 6 days away, if you're handicapping this time next Friday, is Giannis on the Bucks or on another team?
I'm kind of on the fence, and I'll go ahead and say he's still on the Bucks. And
Really?
I think, well, I don't know, like the Bucks and their GM John Horst. We've talked about this. He wants a lot in return for Giannis, and understandably so. And so, if you go 2 days ago when the noise was okay, they're finally listening, to yesterday, and this is kind of widely out there, is that all of a sudden people around the league started handicapping that the Warriors were in the best position of anybody. That's fine, and I get that. I just still have a hard time seeing the Bucks, hitting the button on what the Warriors have to offer. Whatever. I know it's a lot of picks, but the players are not, to me, the Kuminga. If Jimmy Butler's in there, like whatever the package looks like, I don't think it's not the type of thing that I've envisioned John Horst saying yes to. And the picks specifically, timeline wise, are of the variety that, like, if you give Giannis Antetokounmpo to the Warriors with Steph Curry, who's still at an all-star level, and I don't know if Draymond's still going to be on the team, probably will be. Like, those picks are not going to be very good. They're going to win a lot of games. So there's other teams involved, certainly, but the Miamis of the world, the Minnesotas of the world, like they have more to offer in the summertime. And there's part of me that thinks that this still gets pushed back to the offseason.
Did it surprise you, whether this is fully accurate or not, but some of the intel out there is a team like the Rockets, maybe even the Spurs, aren't interested? That's at least according to reports. Because I think if Giannis is quote-unquote available, I believe, Sam, everybody should be interested. Now, certainly some teams just can't get him, but did that surprise you that some potential contenders here, that he's a guy that could potentially put him over the top, that maybe the Spurs and Rockets aren't interested?
No, I mean that's been the intel for a while, but to your point, like that could change now that it's for real, and it's it's kind of like the backdrop there is the way that Oklahoma City built their group, and really you could I think throw OKC in there, even though they won the title and they're out in front. Like they could certainly put something together to get that job done and get Giannis, but the desire for longevity and building from within. Atlanta is also claiming to be taking the same stance, that they're out, for those similar reasons. And it's just a matter of, it's like, again, it goes back to the first question and how much it's going to take to get him. You're going to gut your cupboard when it comes to draft assets. You're going to gut your roster as well. Like they're coming for everything. And that is where, I don't know, maybe John Horst looks at it and says the level of desperation with the Warriors, maybe that is the best package they can get. I tend to think that Miami in the summer could beat what the Warriors have now. They would have access, I believe, to 4 first-round picks. So, but to your Houston-San Antonio question, San Antonio feels amazing about what they have. I think there's a debate to be had about, might the Rockets regret not getting in on the Giannis situation, because their team is not popping, if you will, like to the degree that I think they had hoped.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're 28-17, but they've dropped a fair amount of games lately, and you can't really find people that think that they're actually going to win the title. Like they're a very good team, but so you could debate the Houston one, but that's the rationale, I think.
So I trust your knowledge of Giannis, who you've gotten to know personally over the years. When you get to this spot, he's been very committed to Milwaukee, to his credit, and they've built something great there, and he's been one of the greatest Bucks of all time, if not the greatest Buck. When him and his camp get to this point, though, Sam, where they're at least comfortable with these talks being out there, and maybe there's a desire to leave, if your hunch is right that maybe he's still a Buck come Friday, how does that work for him? Because I feel like once you've entered that spot, like you kind of go all in. What is it going to be like for Giannis' side if he is still a Buck come summertime?
It's funny because for one, the injury has people wondering, the calf injury, if he's going to play again this season. Now, I think he would, and people around him, or people who know him, I should say, they will highlight, like, he's somebody who he wants to continue building his career-long personal profile, if that makes sense. Like, yeah. So he's not looking to leave, let's say, 300-400 points on the table, just to sit when he's healthy, even if they're not winning games. And so just generally speaking, he wants to compete. He's not going to not play if he's healthy. So if he played, then sure, that could be a little crunchy, and he's going to have to do media and answer questions about, how uncomfortable it is. Now, I've been having this conversation with people around the league lately about it's like the De'Aaron Fox situation is one that's worth putting out there as context, or a comparison, because these teams get in situations like the Kings last year when you have to decide, like, are you going to do it midseason, and are you going to respond to the uncomfortableness that exists because the guy wants to go somewhere else? I would argue the Kings should have waited and done something in the summertime, but the uncomfortableness was at a pretty high level, and I've since been told by people who were part of that there was not much appetite to keep dealing with that cloud hanging over their head. So that's where the human component comes into play. Because to steal a phrase from, my colleague and buddy, John Hollinger at The Athletic, he's a former front office guy. He's like, if you treated this thing like a video game, then you wait till the summer.
Mm-hmm.
That's just all there is to it. But the human component does change things a lot of times, and that's where we got to wait and see if they kind of succumb to that.
Yeah, and again, this would be just pure speculation on your part. Any read on to what that uncomfortableness is like in Milwaukee? You had a better sense of it here, but certainly in Milwaukee, and it's still a week away and things can change, but just any read on what that would feel like there as far as their uncomfortableness right now with him?
I mean, you had the booing a couple of weeks ago. It was not necessarily Giannis specific. The team was playing terribly. He didn't take that well. He booed back. So like the mood has changed a little bit, because even though they might not have been booing him, his choice to give the whole crowd a thumbs down, like now you have kind of raw meat, for the crowd when it comes to the reading the room in Milwaukee. You've got the knowledge that I tend to believe that this latest report was kind of strategically dropped as a way for the Bucks to test the market, as opposed to, I think in the past, a lot of this stuff was getting leaked from Giannis's camp. But regardless, now the fans know, it's not like anybody's come out and said, no, this isn't true. He's a Buck for life. Nobody's denying
Mm-hmm.
what's out there. So yeah, I mean, this is not toxic like a Jimmy Butler in Miami type situation. It's not like that. And Giannis he's not going to be yelling at people or then yelling at him. It's just uncomfortable, and I think that would be unpleasant for them to deal with for a few months.
What do you think from the league's perspective, Sam? Because you've been talking to us for weeks about how difficult it's just become league-wide to make a trade. We've seen it. It is more difficult with aprons and just different criteria the league has. But if Giannis were to be dealt between now and next week, and that would be on the heels of last year where Luka got traded. We've seen Kyrie and Durant. Like, there have been mega stars that have been traded over the last few years. It's great for content, for us, for you. Does the league like this? That, I mean, kind of the success story is Giannis drafted there, develops into a generational player, but then gets moved. Like, what do you think the league thinks about this?
I would contend that they're fine with it. Yes, they do. They're not, those two things are not mutually exclusive. They're not rooting for an outcome. Like, if, I know some conspiracy theorists would say they want, all their stars in big markets, but they also don't want their small market teams to not thrive. And, case in point, OKC winning the title. But they know that, like, the gossipy nature of the NBA drives interest.
Mm-hmm.
I think they are perfectly fine with that. They embrace the drama. Even if you watch some of the league's media sponsors, like obviously the ESPNs, the Amazons now, the NBCs, they will get into these storylines and these narratives. They don't avoid them. It's another sign of kind of the tacit approval from the NBA. They're in a business fight, to like an eternal fight, to catch up with the NFL, and to cut into that massive gap that exists between those two sports. And again, I don't know if people agree, but like, I mean, I can even tell you from our coverage, it is pretty, at times, a little disheartening that the audience for the game itself, it a lot of times pales in comparison for the audience for this type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I could write a basketball thing related to the Bucks and Giannis, and it'll get 1/10 of the readership, of a story about where he might go next.
Yeah.
So it's just a big part of the conversation.
Yeah, there's a thirst for the fans, certainly on that. And let's talk about the Kings fans. Sam, for weeks you've been telling us the player to watch is Keon. Are we still in that kind of same general idea that Keon is coveted by the majority of the league at this point?
Yeah, I'm a little, not shocked, but a little surprised that nothing's actually gone down there yet. I think and assume, and I've probably heard that it's like the market's really good, and after I had written some stuff about it, Mark Stein indicated that I think he said 14 teams were interested in Keon. the Kings have wanted a first, and for one, I think the fact that there's still a lot of time before the deadline means teams are, they're not really incentivized to put their best offer on the table unless, they're trying to win games and they want that guy now. But I'm just curious to see if they ultimately get that first, because you can have a lot of interest, but I have run into some teams that they're pausing on the idea, and this goes back to the little strange way that the Kings have used their roster on the floor, is like, okay, we're giving up a first for a guy who's not really playing that much. It's hard for some teams to rationalize that, and so again, lots of interest for sure.
Yeah.
I fully expect to go somewhere. Just curious to see what they get back.
You've also written about recently about Sabonis. Look, I know that a lot of teams aren't looking to take on additional money, and that's kind of the problem the Kings are in, where DeRozan, though, has limited guaranteed money after this year. LaVine has money. Sabonis has money after this year. Monk, so on and so forth. Guys, I'm sure they'd like to deal to get younger. But what do you hear with Toronto and others maybe about Domantas Sabonis?
There's like a fair amount of interest, but his money is just so massive that for now I would tend to think he's not going anywhere. There was a little pushback when I wrote the Toronto thing in terms of that actually unfolding. Again, I mean, there's interest. Even this place I'm at now is a good example. Like, I know for a fact the Suns have liked Sabonis in the past. In fact, back before the Suns did the Durant trade, there were discussions about something where he might be involved in that. But again, now that, just to use them as an example, a team like the Suns is no longer in the business of trying to move $50 million. And so now they're out of that business and they don't have any current interest because of, partly basketball reasons, but largely business and just the money side of things. And so Toronto, that's another team that probably isn't getting Giannis, but I think, has poked around on the edges and doesn't want to be totally out of that conversation. And they've looked at Anthony Davis and, they checked in reportedly on Ja Morant. And so Sabonis is one of those guys. But they might be patient here and wait until the summer themselves. Their GM, Bobby Webster, there was a rumor that he really needed to make a splash now because he might be under pressure because his contract was expiring. Well, then the Raptors kind of leaked, again, I'm assuming because it was all internal stuff, that he might be getting or he should be getting a contract extension soon. And the point of sharing that is that would give him more organizational confidence where he could be patient. So to bring it back to Sabonis, they're kind of kicking the tires on a lot, and I don't know if they're actually going to do anything.
So as we stand now, I mean, you're looking at that Kings roster. Keon would be one to watch, but other than that, I mean, is this in your gut or your intel telling you that might be it for the Kings?
It could be. I mean, I haven't heard too many specifics on DeMar.
Which shocks me, honestly.
Yeah, it may be, but maybe it's like a last, no disrespect to DeMar, maybe it's like a last option type of thing that happens the day of the deadline or the day before. Once teams know, okay, we didn't get this guy, we didn't get that guy, like that. I'd written about the Clippers in the past, and DeMar, and so there had been conversations there, but I'm not hearing anything current in terms of that progressing anywhere.
Sam Amick from the Athletic.
Sorry, the Warriors thing. That's on me. Sorry.
Yeah.
Is like, the Warriors have been mentioned, but they made it kind of clear they don't have interest. So I'm not sure.
Sam Amick from the Athletic joining us. Sam, in your circles too, and other writers through the Athletic, are you getting any information from GMs and agents that are, I don't know the right term for it, but frustrated, bothered by the new restrictions? Because, I mean, look, I'm sure they want some of their clients to move around, or GMs are trying to make more trades. Everybody we're hearing, it's like difficult to make a trade. Everybody wants picks. Picks have become just full-on gold, and I feel like everything's kind of feels like right now it's a little bit hamstrung. What are people saying about the collective bargaining agreement they're in right now?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's more current focus on the Giannis situation gumming everything up.
Mm,
And yes, the CBA issues that we've talked about in the past are a factor without question. But, devil's advocate, you could kind of turn and say, well, wait a minute, like Desmond Bain just got sent to Orlando for 4 firsts and 2 first round swaps. Um, Now, like that particular trade, I'm not saying it's a big factor, but if I'm a GM, like that gives me a reason to pause because
mhm.
you just got a reminder that, like, man, somebody went for it and they are currently, fighting for playing position, and they emptied the barrel and got nothing left draft wise.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it is, you're seeing teams obviously be terrified about big money, terrified about long money. Like even the Malik one's a good example to me. He does not make ridiculous money in today's NBA, and it's a couple of years. And like I get it when it's a Sabonis thing because it's such a massive contract, but man, people acting like Malik is like, just gonna wreck your payroll, and that's a little surprising to me. The guy can, if you actually empower that guy, he can give you 20 a night, and that, there was a time when that was seen as pretty valuable in the NBA. So it is a weird time. And if I'm being real, because we talk about this stuff all the time, I enjoy trying to get to the bottom of all these different situations and share what's going on behind the scenes. But my goodness, it is unfulfilling when it's not, like, doesn't involve any actual action, like other than the Trey Young trade. It's,
Uh-huh.
we've had nothing. It's just the same, whether we're talking Kings or any other team. It's just the same circular conversation while everybody, doesn't actually pull the trigger on something.
Yeah, and I'm curious too, just on maybe a GM philosophy right now, because we know everybody is so into picks right now. Do you think that's more of the contract control that teams would then have in years to come? Because not every draft class is great. So if you're stocking all these draft picks and it's a lean year, like where's the real benefit besides having just more assets? What do you think it is about picks right now that's kind of the gold of the league?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's the control, it's the, relatively efficient, economic side of it. It's the long runway that if you draft well and you get a guy that delivers in your program, now you've got bird rights. Now most guys are signing that first extension, and so at that point you're talking about a 7-8 year window, and that is, that's better than I mean, even out in here in Phoenix, for an example, Dylan Brooks has had an amazing year. Like, just to compare the rookie scale approach to, okay, the Suns went and got a good player in Dylan Brooks, except it's now, and they'll figure it out, but he's having a career year. He's extension eligible this summer, and you're going to have to, I think he currently makes like 21, 22 million. Like, and you're going to have to give him a ton of money.
Yeah.
And so then it's like Sabonis. It's like even Levine. I had someone tell me the other day, like, man, he's fine if he's making 25, like he's a
Right.
good player. But, like the second Domas signed that big extension, he became so I kind of hate the terminology we use sometimes. These are not assets, these are humans. But like, the terminology that gets used is like, is it a positive asset or negative? And
Right.
like, in a lot of people's eyes, like Domas went from being positive to negative, but it's just because of the contract.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest part. The irony, though, is, to me, is you look at like who was in the finals last year, and the Thunder traded for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. The Pacers traded for Tyrese Halliburton. So this homegrown narrative, like there are homegrown players on those two teams, but this homegrown narrative is a little bit overplayed.
Yeah. It is. I agree. And that's weird that everybody's kind of trying to get to that point to get all the assets they can. Well, Sam, I appreciate you being flexible with us this week, joining us on Friday. Next week, when we talk to you on your regular Thursday time, will be trade deadline day. I know there'll be some drama between now and then, and we encourage people to check out all your great work at The Athletic, and I know we look forward to talking to you next week.
Thanks, Jay. Be good.
All right, thank you. That's Sam Amick. Also, check out his story coming up soon. I'm curious about that. What's going on in Phoenix too? What a turnaround for them. And Ishbia was kind of the guy. Like, all right, you're a little over your skis here, but he's done a much better job, and that organization has as well. Hopefully, you enjoyed that with Sam. If you ever miss anything from any of our shows, remember to go back to SactownSports.com. We've got our podcasts up there. You can go to our YouTube page, like, subscribe, and follow anything you ever miss, kind of on demand, whenever you want to check out our content. We appreciate that. Still to come in this hour, what's hot, what's not.